That leads us to another exciting edition of Harvey's Hot Takes with Bryan Hayes, the host of Overdrive on TSN Radio in Toronto. Bryan, great to see you. So we know Juan Soto chose the Mets on Sunday night. We know the Toronto Blue Jays made an offer. We don't know how seriously that Soto and his camp took that offer, but I do want to show you this tweet, Bryan, from MLB.com's Keegan Matheson, who's at the baseball winter meetings, and it reads like this. Ross Atkins says the Jays were grateful to be part of the process with Juan Soto. When I asked if that financial flexibility could be used immediately elsewhere, Atkins said, every player, every acquisition is unique. I would say that those two are incredibly unique. Bryan, how grateful are you to have been able to watch the Jays' pursuits of Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto?
I'll never forget it, Jay. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive when Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani were nice enough to allow the Blue Jays in a room with them to make a pitch that ultimately went nowhere. And I could understand where they were going with Shohei, and I think a lot of people, a lot of Blue Jay fans really, they started to dream, and they were dreaming big, the idea of Ohtani coming here. And I think any fan base in the league would. But it was so hard to get over the heartbreak. And that's what it was for a lot of Blue Jay fans who had bought into the idea that Ohtani could actually be coming up here when he went to the Dodgers. This time around, I don't think there was a Blue Jay fan on earth that thought they were actually getting Juan Soto. And I find it hard to believe Mark Shapiro and or Ross Atkins actually believed it either. I really, really do. And the idea that they were grateful to be in on the process, grateful to reportedly offer him well over $700 million that he turned down is just an absurd way of describing it. And I think what he's really saying there, Ross Atkins, is that he's grateful that Scott Boras included them in all this and that they're basically kissing the ring of Scott Boras. And I think that's very frustrating for Blue Jay fans, that they feel obligated to do something like that because Boras has torched this team in the past. And Boras is the definition of a super agent, and he's Soto's agent. But he has been so hard on them in the past. He's been better to them recently. He's been much more complimentary to the front office and ownership up here ever since they signed Hyun-Jin Ryu a number of years ago. But that's basically what I think Atkins is saying here. Kissing the ring of Boras. We're so grateful that we could possibly be a part of this. I mean, come on, grateful? What are they going to do? Put that on a banner up level of excellence down at the Rogers Center? It's an embarrassing way to phrase it. I don't think anyone should feel grateful that you offered that much money and it got turned down. And if anything, the Jays were used in this process, the Yankees, probably the Red Sox, in order for Soto and Boras to get exactly what they wanted, which was 15 years, $765 million, and he stays in New York, only goes over with the Mets. So, if anything, Jay, in all seriousness here, I'm grateful this is finally over. They weren't going to get Ohtani, and they certainly were never going to get Soto. So let's move on. Let him go to New York, and let's get to some serious business here that maybe the Jays can actually pull off in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it comes across as, quite frankly, pathetic. Let's check out another tweet from Keegan Matheson. This one reads, Ross Atkins says the Blue Jays need to stay disciplined to how they view extension talks with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., adding, nothing has changed in terms of our pursuit of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and we are very hopeful to extend him. Bryan, do you see any chance the Jays actually get an extension done with Vladdy, considering the money that is being thrown around in baseball right now?
They better. They better. There's no explanation for not doing this because we can sit here and goof on the idea that they were in on Ohtani or in on Juan Soto. And again, reportedly, they were willing to spend a lot of money. Whether or not they thought they could actually get them, whether or not those players were truly entertaining the idea, by all accounts, the money was going to be there, courtesy of Rogers. And as we heard from Ross earlier, those two players very unique. Vladdy is not going to be asking for $700 million plus, nor is he going to get it from the Blue Jays or anybody else. But he's going to make a lot of money. He's younger than Juan Soto. He's a very good player. He's your superstar. He's your marketing piece. He's the unique player to Toronto. And what has become clear here is if they want to be serious players, they have to prove they can at least keep their own guys who, by all accounts, like being here and like being Blue Jays. And that's what Vladdy's always said. Vladdy chose them at 16. He signed with the Jays when he was young. He chose them. He decided to be a part of this program. He has said that he likes it here, that he loves being in Toronto. So you need to make sure that you land this guy. If you allow Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to play out his contract here and let's say he puts up a season just replicate of what he did last year, which was a great, great season. He replicates what he did last year. He's going to hit the market, and there's a chance the Yankees come calling, the Red Sox come calling, maybe the Mets come calling. Who knows? The Giants, the Dodgers, all these big game hunters will come circle the wagons on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And I know he said publicly before, I'll never play for the Yankees, not interested in playing for the Yankees. Well, maybe they make an offer that he simply can't refuse. Right? Maybe they go down the Don Corleone road and say, Vladdy, what is it going to cost you? Because we missed out on Soto, we missed out on Ohtani, and who knows where the Yankees are going to go in the future. Or Fenway Park. He loves Rafael Devers, a friend of his. He loves playing at Fenway. The Sox appear to be major players again. They want to get back in on the act and be a superstar team again. The idea of losing out on a homegrown talent simply is unacceptable, Jay. And they need to prove that they can keep their own guys. Because, again, when it comes to the likes of Ohtani and Soto, they're going to New York. They're going to L.A. They're going to San Francisco. They're going to Boston. They're not coming up here. But if Vladdy wants to be here, yes, it's going to cost you a fortune. It's going to cost you more than it did yesterday. The idea of them nickel and diming him would be absurd. And it would be an embarrassing move, and quite frankly, it would be insulting to your fan base that you're really in on Soto, you're really in on Ohtani, but oops, just couldn't make it work for Vladdy, not buying it. And if you don't believe in the guy, then trade him. There's two options, Jay. You either sign him and you find the money, or you trade him. There cannot be an in-between there where you just let it play out and he leaves. And I think the biggest fear for Blue Jays fans is that that possibly could happen because of how desperate Atkins is, how desperate Shapiro is to win this season. Not in the future, this season. And again, if it gets to a point where they let Vladdy have a platform year and he is a rock star this season and he leaves and he goes down the street within the division, I don't know how they recover from that. They have to find a way to make it work, make the money work. You've got to keep your own stars, especially when they're homegrown.
And the longer they let this go, Brian, as you've alluded to, the more this is going to cost this team. Do you see the Jays, Brian, making any significant acquisitions at all this offseason?
I'm skeptical, Jay. I am. I mean, the Soto scenario played out like the Ohtani scenario played out last year. And afterwards, they signed, you know, a few veterans. They brought in Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. They brought in Justin Turner. They brought Kevin Kiermaier back when, by all accounts, he had no market out there. He told us that on Overdrive. He's like, no one was calling. And the Jays picked up the phone and got Kiermaier. If they go back down that road, again, I don't know how this front office possibly explains it. So desperation and what happened this season would suggest they've got to get in the game. They clearly have the money. But again, I would think that starts with Vladdy. Where does Bo Bichette come into play in all this? These are players that they have on their team right now. Signed, will play for them if they want to this year. But what are you going to do with them in the future? But also, my skepticism also goes to a point where who are you competing with? Now you have a spurned New York Yankees team. That's dangerous. They missed out on Soto. That market, you know what New York is like, Jay. They'll be all over them to get in on guys like Santander, which apparently the Jays are very, very likely to make a pitch on him. Is he going to sign here? Is he going to go to New York? Is he going to go to Boston? Right? Houston, are you going to get Bregman? Are you willing to pay the money for Bregman? Is that going to be a George Springer 2.0? Is that even a smart play? I don't know. Or is Houston going to pony up the money and keep him? You know, there's other players like Max Fried and Corbin Burns. These are stud pitchers. But are they really going to come to Toronto unless they are willing to really overpay? And I'm not sure we're going to see that. Because, again, what Ross Atkins just said on the record, unique when it comes to Soto and Ohtani, everyone else you got to be disciplined with. So if you're asking these players to take the same money but come north of the border when they can get it in New York, Boston, Chicago, San Francisco, Houston, I'm not sure they're going to win that battle. So I'm skeptical until they do it. I mean, that's ultimately what this front office, I think, deserves in terms of that type of an attitude. They have to prove, Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, they can get players because they need a lot of them. They probably need someone to play third base. They need a power bat in left field. They probably need a backup catcher, maybe another starter and multiple arms in the bullpen. You mentioned Romano. They were apparently going to circle back on him. He said, no thanks. I'm going to Philly. They got to figure this out. They got a lot of work to do. They were an awful baseball team last year. They've wasted time on Soto. It went nowhere. They better figure this out. But until they do, I'm skeptical, and I would assume a lot of Blue Jay fans are skeptical too.
It's such a stressful situation around the Blue Jays. I want to lighten things up a little bit because, Brian, your regular job is the grand poobah of Overdrive on TSN Radio Toronto. It's a terrific show with you and Jeff O'Neill and Jamie McLennan. And this is extremely special because Tuesday night, you and Jamie and Jeff will be on the panel for the Leafs-Devils game right here on TSN in the Leafs region. I guess my question for you, Bryan, is how excited are you to once again get to sit next to James Duthie?
Grateful is the word I would use. Grateful. I'm grateful that I get to sit beside the great James Duthie on Tuesday night. It's going to be fun.
And we all should be grateful to see it. And James should be grateful to sit next to you guys. And just like Harvey's been serving up burgers for 65 years to Canadians, Bryan's been serving up the hot takes since 1983. Thanks for this, buddy.
Hot Takes is presented by Harvey's. Customize your burger and get it delivered from our app to your door. Harvey's, it's a beautiful thing.